The Sao Paulo Forum is celebrating its 30th anniversary this Tuesday with a video conference of Latin American and Caribbean leaders. Russian scientists are developing 26 variants of a vaccine against the novel coronavirus in 17 institutes of the country. The funeral of former Tanzanian President Benjamin Mkapa took place in Dar es Salaam on Tuesday. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. This Tuesday, a virtual conference was held to mark the 30th anniversary of the founding of the Sao Paulo Forum. Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega highlighted the importance of Latin American unity. He also praised Cuba's historic solidarity with Nicaragua, including in the struggle against the Somoza dictatorship.
All of a sudden, the Cuban mission appeared. Somoza couldn't say no, and Cuba and Fidel couldn't step aside. Besides, the man who governed Nicaragua was a tyrant who had offered his services to attack Cuba. Despite that, Fidel had no doubts on sending admissions of Cuban doctors to help the families that had been affected by the earthquake here in Managua. The principle of solidarity was sown by Fidel, and that principle of solidarity was the most noble principle, the most honorable, that gives strength to humanity. Solidarity.
And speaking during the Sao Paulo Forum video conference, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro highlighted the role of this space in achieving regional goals and stressed the importance of its presence on social media.
We are facing the battle on social media, online, in the streets and on the walls. Media, internet, streets, walls. Winning the battle of truth at every level. That is what our commander Hugo Chavez taught us. He is present. Here we feel his presence.
And Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel also participated in the Sao Paulo Forum and noted the role of Hugo Chavez within the organization.
This celebration also allows us to express gratitude for the permanent support the Cuban people have received from the Sao Paulo Forum, and especially the campaign against the blockade and calling for its lifting this year. This video conference coincides with the 66th anniversary of the birth of a very dear friend of Cuba, who was defined by Fidel Castro as Cuba's best friend, and that of all those people in struggle, Commander Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias, who in the 2012 Sao Paulo Forum invited us to fearlessly lay down the foundational stone of South American, Latin American, Caribbean and global freedom.
This Tuesday marks the 66th anniversary of the birth of Venezuelan leader and revolutionary Hugo Chavez. Chavez was born on July 28, 1954, in the state of Barinas. On February 4, 1992, he led the civic-military rebellion against the neoliberal government of Carlos Andrés Pérez. Despite not having achieved its objectives, Chavez assumed his responsibility for the events of that day and became a popular figure among Venezuelans. He later went on to campaign for change in the country, leading to his election as president of Venezuela. Chavez assumed the presidency in 1998 and was re-elected 3 times. A socialist and anti-imperialist, Chavez was inspired by Venezuelan independence heroes Simón Rodríguez, Ezequiel Zamora and the liberator Simón Bolívar. Chavez passed away on March 5, 2013. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza denounced that once again his country is being attacked in violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations following the vandalism and looting of the Venezuelan consulate in the Colombian capital. In statements to the press on Tuesday, Arreaza stressed that the Colombian government ignored its international obligations on allowing this destruction to occur. The Foreign Minister showed video footage filmed at the consulate in Bogotá, revealing the damage to the building, as well as the indifference of Colombian authorities. Arreaza also denounced that valuable works of art and documents of national interest to Venezuela were looted from the consulate.
Valuable material belonging to the Venezuelans that reside in Colombia was stolen. The truth is, this is a very regrettable situation. And if we go to Article 45 of this convention, we can see the responsibility that, even in the worst scenario, the host state has, in case of the rupture of diplomatic relations, or if the states put an end to a mission, definitively or temporarily. We should recall that Venezuela and Colombia broke off their relations on February 23, 2019, after an attempt to invade Venezuelan territory was launched from Colombian territory, as yet another attack against our country. Since that date, we have not had diplomatic, political, or consular relations. However, there is a convention that protects our diplomatic missions.
Colombia's Attorney General has charged Diego Cadena, the lawyer for former President Álvaro Uribe, with bribery and procedural fraud. After 7 months, prosecutors accused Diego Cadena, together with lawyer Juan José Salazar, of undertaking criminal activities and sharing the spoils. According to the evidence presented on July 18, 2017, Cadena visited the Palmira prison and talked to former paramilitary Carlos Enrique Vélez and negotiated payment of 200 million Colombian pesos in exchange for false testimony against Senator Iván Cepeda. According to the deal, Vélez would testify that Cepeda bribed him to testify against Senator Álvaro Uribe. The two lawyers face a sentence of between 6 and 12 years if found guilty. Peruvian authorities commemorated the country's Independence Day this Tuesday. Meanwhile, President Martín Vizcarra announced investment of nearly $5 billion in the healthcare system.
We will make the largest health investment in history in the Republic's General Budget 2021. About 20 billion souls so that all Peruvians can have access to quality health services. In response to people's demand for unity, I want to take this opportunity to call on all political forces to build a new basic agreement, the Peru Pact, aimed at improving relationship between political parties and the state's powers.
Latin America has become the new epicenter of the novel coronavirus pandemic. The region has now reported over 4.3 million COVID-19 cases, which represents 26.8% of the global total. Brazil is the worst-hit nation, reporting more than 2.4 million cases and over 88,000 fatalities. Despite this health crisis, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro continues to downplay the risks and has failed to implement adequate measures to avoid the surge in infections. Meanwhile, although Mexico, Peru and Colombia have experienced a steady spike in new COVID-19 cases, authorities are working to reopen their economies, which have been heavily impacted by the pandemic. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez offered an update on the COVID-19 figures in the country this Tuesday. Rodriguez reported 539 new locally transmitted COVID-19 cases and 44 imported cases in the last 24 hours. She explained that 177 of the new cases diagnosed were located in the capital district. The Vice President also informed that 62% of people diagnosed with the virus have made a full recovery. In the last 24 hours, Venezuela also registered 5 new COVID-19 deaths. As the first UK commercial flight successfully returned to St. Lucia earlier this week, the country is seeking to reassure holidaymakers from around the world. The island officially reopened its borders in June. The St. Lucia Tourism Authority recently conducted a survey with over 1,000 travel agents and operators from the island's main source markets to determine whether holidaymakers were likely to travel amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Travel industry professionals reported that demand is picking up from all markets, with 2/3 reporting an increase in inquiries for the Caribbean in the last 30 days. St. Lucia has recorded very low levels of infection, with just 24 COVID-19 cases confirmed and no deaths. And we'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Those demonstrating against police brutality and systemic racism in the US city of Portland continue to face repression by security forces. The protests have intensified following President Donald Trump's decision to send federal agents to control the ongoing demonstrations in some US cities. Protesters describe these federal agents as paramilitaries. They have also warned that after 60 days of street protests, federal agents have begun to use different types of gases to disperse people, which cause vomiting and other reactions. In addition, protesters condemn the use of metal pellets against demonstrators early Tuesday morning. Russian scientists are developing 26 variants of a vaccine against the novel coronavirus in 17 institutes of the country. According to the head of the Russian consumer watchdog, Anna Popova, one vaccine has already passed clinical trials involving volunteers. She added that the vaccine developed by the Russian Center for Virology and Biotechnology has no biological agent, which is why it produces almost no side effects. Over 3 million novel coronavirus cases have now been reported across Europe. Spain, Romania, Bulgaria, Portugal, Germany and France are currently the major COVID-19 hotspots in the continent. According to a surge in new COVID-19 cases, some European governments are considering the reimposition of restrictions, including the mandatory use of face masks and the closing of nightlife centres, which have become the main sources of new infections. Meanwhile, British authorities have decided to apply a compulsory quarantine to passengers arriving from Spain, which has reported at least 360 new outbreaks of the virus. In the meantime, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has called on the population to maintain calm, noting that over 70% of the new outbreaks have affected less than 10 people. Italy's education minister announced on Tuesday that schools will reopen in September.
In September, schools will start. I want to say this clear and I want to repeat it here in this chamber to reach all the families that are listening to us who are often overwhelmed by alarming and apocalyptic statements. Last 24th July, I signed the order that rules the lessons will start on September 14th. We are in close and constant contact with the Ministry of Health for all the medical aspects. I'm referring to the serological test, to a new coordination between schools and public healthcare system, also to support deans and staff in dealing with that is related to the healthcare.
Germany's disease control agency has voiced concern over rising coronavirus numbers in the country as authorities issued a travel warning against parts of Spain. The president of the Robert Koch Institute said that Germany had fared better than many of its neighbours in suppressing the virus and urged citizens not to squander the progress made. The stark warning comes as countries around the world face a surge in infections, fueling fears of a second wave. Meanwhile, tourist travel to the autonomous communities of Aragon, Catalonia and Navarra in Spain is currently discouraged due to renewed high levels of cases and local lockdowns. Germany has so far recorded over 200,000 COVID-19 cases and more than 9,000 deaths.
Wir sehen viele kleine Ausbrüche.
We see a lot of small clusters growing in different places at the same time, and we see this becoming more frequent. We must prevent that the virus once again spreads rapidly and uncontrollably, and we can only do this together.
The Vietnamese coastal city of Da Nang has enforced new social distancing measures after more than a dozen locally transmitted COVID-19 cases were recently confirmed. Beaches and restaurants have closed and residents are asked to stay at home to curb the spread of the virus. The Vietnamese government has suspended all flights into and out of the city, where the country's first COVID-19 cases in months were recently detected. Trains, boats, buses, taxis and tourist vehicles in Da Nang will also be halted for 15 days. So far, Vietnam has reported a total of just 438 cases and no COVID-19 deaths.
Like last time, the Da Nang city authorities have acted drastically in fighting the pandemic. All the shops have been asked to close so the pandemic doesn't spread further in the community. People like us have followed the instructions from the city authorities and closed our shops. Everyone here supports the city's policy. Our hotel really trusts in the directive of the government. Our hotel and other hotels in the city will join hands to fight COVID-19 pandemic.
Now we have more news coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The funeral service of former Tanzanian President Benjamin Mkapa took place in Dar es Salaam on Tuesday.
It is with great sadness that we have lost the former President Benjamin William Mkapa. Benjamin's death is a big loss not only to his family, but also to other countries in Eastern Africa, the Great Lake region, and Africa in general.
I will always remember the late President Benjamin Mkapa for his efforts at promoting inclusive economic growth and transparency in our country. He was a man of the people. He never discriminated against anyone regardless of their status. He loved all people. May his soul rest in peace.
It is a great loss to many of us, since the late President Mkapa was a great leader and he did a lot for this nation, especially building infrastructure. So his death has shocked most of us Tanzanians. We were not even aware he was sick.
Malian Prime Minister Boubou Sisi this Tuesday urged political opponents to join the new unity government proposal in order to solve the political crisis in the country.
I hope that this offer of dialogue that the President of the Republic has already had to make on several occasions, an offer that we are relying this afternoon, can be heard by the actors of the M5 RFP, not only heard but accepted, and allow us to emerge from the crisis situation in which we find ourselves. I would like to take this opportunity to make an appeal, a sincere appeal to our sisters and brothers in the M5 RFP and other groups. I would like to say here, and each of the members of the government join me in this, that they are expected and even strongly desired in this next government that must be put in place soon.
South African authorities reported more than 7,000 new coronavirus cases this Tuesday. Meanwhile, residents have voiced concerns over the difficulty in observing measures in the face of increasing infections.
We have to bury a lot of people, and it's hard for us. It's really hard because they're really close to us, and we use the same tap or the same toilets, and we don't have any sanitation inside the toilets.
And you can see, Alexander, we've got small houses. How are you going to isolate yourself as an elderly person from the other person who's got COVID?
The Saudi Arabian Foreign Minister conducted an official visit to Tunisia on Tuesday to address regional issues, including the situation in Libya.
We found great convergences between the positions of the Saudi Kingdom and the Republic of Tunisia regarding the many challenges facing this region and the Arab world. Converging views notably on the situation in Libya, on which we agreed on the importance of pushing for a Libyan solution that will lead to a peaceful settlement generating stability in the country and protecting it from foreign intervention and terrorism.
Millions of people have been affected by monsoon flooding in Bangladesh, triggered by heavy rains and an onrush of waters from upstream India. According to a recent estimate by the country's National Needs Assessment Working Group, some 3.9 million people have been affected by this year's floods, while more than 7.5 million are still at risk of flooding across the nation of 160 million. Low-lying Bangladesh is highly prone to floods and climate-related shocks and stresses and sees monsoon damage every year.
I have eaten only once in 7 days. My brothers and sisters gave me some food. I survived with that. Today I've been able to get on a boat. As you can see, everyone is living like this. Some are living on scaffolds, some are living on boats. Those who have boats are able to move around a little, and those who have no boats are living in worse conditions than prisoners. I've understood what misery flooding brings to human life this time. This place, which has become the river now, used to be the site of nearly 250 houses. All those houses were engulfed by the river due to rising water and fast current. We had a demand of building a cross dam here. Had there been a dam here, all these poor people wouldn't have lost their homes and wouldn't have to live on roads like beggars.
United Nations officials have launched an investigation into the incident that occurred on Monday on the southern border between Lebanon and Israel.
UNIFIL head of mission and force commander, Major General Stefano Del Col, was immediately in contact with Israel Defense Forces and Lebanese armed forces in order to contain the situation, decrease tension, and restore the cessation of hostilities. At this time, calm has returned to the area and UNIFIL is maintaining its presence on the ground. UNIFIL has launched an investigation to determine the facts and circumstances of the incident.
The International Organization for Migration reported that 3 Sudanese migrants were killed and 2 others injured in a shooting as they disembarked in Libya on Monday night.
The International Organization for Migration said today that 3 Sudanese migrants were killed and 2 others injured in a shooting in the Qum's disembarkation point last night in Libya, after being intercepted at sea and returned to shore by the Coast Guard. The shooting occurred after more than 70 people were disembarked from a vessel. Staff from the IOM and Qums said that local authorities started shooting when the migrants attempted to escape from the disembarkation point. The injured migrants were transferred to local hospitals, while survivors were moved to detention. The UN Refugee Agency deplored the tragic loss of lives and called for an urgent investigation following the shooting.
Demonstrations to demand the resignation of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continued this Tuesday. Hundreds of people took to the streets in Tel Aviv to also protest against Netanyahu's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Demonstrators spilled onto a major highway and gathered outside the apartment building of Israeli Public Security Minister Amir Ohani. Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing trial on several corruption charges, including bribery. The current protests against Netanyahu have been the largest in Israel since the public unrest of 2011, when Israelis mobilized to demand economic reforms. Former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak vowed to appeal a 12-year jail sentence handed down by a court on Tuesday after he was found guilty of crimes involving the multi-billion-dollar looting of the state-owned investment fund. Judge Mohammed Nassan Ghazali sentenced Najib to 12 years in jail on 1 count of abuse of power, 3 counts of criminal breach of trust and 3 counts of money laundering, as well as a fine of 210 million ringgit, or about $49.4 million.
Definitely not the end of the world, because there's a process of appeal, and we hope that we would be successful then. So the effort will continue, and to my supporters, I hope they will continue to believe in me, believe in our struggle, and continue to be in positive and in high spirit.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.